Growing weary of running from room to room, practicing one-tooth insurance-driven dentistry? Then stay tuned for the latest episode of the Lionhearted, where Dr. Stephen Rasner will hand you the blueprint for what many call the gold standard of general practice dentistry.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Steve Rasner. And this moment in my career is a long time coming. The moment being, well, I'm about to launch my own series of podcasts. Why would I do that? And why should you tune in? Well, those of you that don't know my story, the story briefly goes like this. I started practicing dentistry in 1980. That would be 38 years ago, in a small town in southern New Jersey. And I'm not proud to tell you this, but that town struggled mightily. The year I moved into it, that's the year it started struggling. Major factory closed down called Owens, Illinois. And from that point up till this video, which is now 2018, it never recovered. Yet somehow during that time, I built this practice that a lot of people think's the gold standard of general practice dentistry. Meaning I get to go to work 4 days a week doing challenging procedures and never worried about getting paid, and this will all be part of the forthcoming podcast that I give. There's a lot to tell you. And working with the same group of people for most of them over 20 years, that would be 18 employees. How did I do that? How did I motivate them? And so what happened to me is that I never started with an agenda of becoming a educator or somebody that was going to share information with my colleagues. They kind of came to me. They came to me 20 years ago. It started in Destin, Florida, with Woody Oakes, the profitable dentist, in front of an audience of 1,500 people. That was my first lecture. And it grew over the 20 years. And I've talked about many, many aspects of dentistry. In the beginning, I just talked about practice management. And as the years turned into many years, at this time in my career, I talk about lots of things, very much including clinical dentistry. And those that are tuning in that are speakers would know that the climate of being a speaker has changed dramatically in the last 10 years. So a lot of the millennials like to listen to podcasts. And so I've done a lot of podcasts in the last half a dozen years. And whenever I do a podcast, I get just as much feedback as if I did a lecture for 6 hours or 8 hours, that I've been doing for many, many years. So I said to myself, well, why not just do my own podcast and try that? And here I am. Those of you that don't know me, I'm as real as it gets. I mean, to a flaw. To a flaw? See what I mean? I don't even know if that's a word or that's the right word. But anyway, what this is, this moment, those of you that have tuned in to see it, is kind of an introduction to what's going to be coming to you, probably weekly, indefinitely. I am going to share with you everything I know. Everything I know would include very much the business aspect of a successful fee-for-service practice in 2018. I mean, I know there's a lot of clinicians out there watching right now that are amazing. You could blow me off the road with your clinical skills. But maybe you haven't been able to put it together in your own town somewhere in the United States or Canada or Europe because you don't know how to do that. Nobody's showed you, and it's not expensive to do what I do. I'm going to be talking about so many things like a relationship-based practice. What's that mean? A relationship-based practice. It means to me that the people that come to me in this part of the United States, an area, by the way, ranked by USA Today a few years back as the second worst place to live in the United States. I don't even live here. I mean, I used to, but I live in Philly. How do I consistently, get the patients to come to us, value the type of dentistry that I know how to do, and then pay for it? And be appreciative and send their friends. How do you do that? Well, relationship-based practice is what it says it is. And you know what? All you have to think about is the following. Think about where you do your business at. Think about where your veterinarian or where you buy your clothes or who's your physician. Although you probably give the physician a slack because you don't think you have many choices. But you do repeat business, we all do, with whoever that is because they make you feel value and you trust the product. That's not complicated, right? So that's what it's going to be. And it translates literally into things like having a front desk person. I mean, that is a key person. The first person virtually that a patient sees when they walk into your place of operation is probably the second most important person in your operation. You know who the most important one is? It's not you, doctor. And it's not your hygienist or best assistant. It's first contact people. So the first one is the one on the telephone. And I'm going to break this down in such detail that this will probably take me to 2050 if I live that long, which is doubtful. So I have a lot to tell you about what's coming. You know, how do we handle the new patient phone call, for example? And you'll hear me talk about something called a screen. And a screen means you only have 8 or 10 hours a day to do what I do. I work full time, by the way. So I live in your world. I face the highs and the lows, you know, the disappointments, the joys of being a dentist. But both of us, we got 8 to 10 hours a day to use these two things, our hands. And part of that day during your week is with new patients. So how many of you in your career have had your hygienist come to you when a new patient went back to the clinical part of your operations and said, come back to you, and they say, they won't let me take any x-rays. That's a buzzkill. So I have to go off course for a second and tell you that 10 years ago I wrote one of several books that I eventually produced, and it was probably my best book. It's called The Protocol Book, What to Do When. What I did, believe it or not, after 20 years of practice, I got tired one day of not knowing what to do when. Somebody would come to me and say, the hygiene patient's 20 minutes late. She's from out of town. What should we do? I mean, I'm getting behind, doc. Or somebody sat in a chair for a 2 or 3 hour appointment and my assistant said, they don't really feel that well. And, you know, they felt like they got kind of strong-armed into keeping this appointment today. What do you want to do? Or somebody said, or I didn't like the way we started our day. It wasn't consistent. Or how we closed our day. Or a new patient. A patient called with a temporary out. And where do you put that patient? It's not hard, but you have to have systems. So what I did for over a year is I had a notebook. I swear this happened. And every time something happened to me that I didn't know the answer to, I wrote it down. And I would say, how do I want the answer to be? What should the answer be in my world for this? And I would go home sometimes and think about it for a few days. And I'd come back and I would have this thing typed out of what this protocol would be. Protocol for how you start your day. Protocol for I'll give you one. The first hygiene patient of the day. So that means a patient calls your office next week and says, hey, I'd like to have the first appointment the first week of August at 8 o'clock. I have to have that in your office. Do they get it? Is that always yes? No, not my office. It's not, and I'm going to tell you why. They only get the opening appointment of the day in my office if they've never broken an appointment. Now, as an aside, I know some of you are new and just starting out, and you may not be able to be as rigid as I am, which I don't think that's really rigid. I think it's just good business. And why do I do that? There's a couple things I want to tell you about that protocol, why that happened. Well, number one, you can't fix the opening appointment break. So you get in your office, it's 8 o'clock, and they're not here. It's 8:20. They're not here. It's 8:30. What do? You just lost that appointment. You might get to 9 o'clock to get there at 8:45, but you lost one patient. And so why is that important? Well, because hygiene, your hygiene department, is the most predictable, profitable center you have. Not the most profitable, but it's predictably profitable, which you can't say, about any of your other dentistry. Do 100% of your root canals work? Do 100% of your shades correct every time? Does 100% of your crown and bridge always go in at the insert visit? No, it doesn't. But if you have a person in hygiene that fulfills that appointment, that your organization is going to profit. Unless you're a non-profit organization, I don't know why that wouldn't be important to you. And here's the last caveat of this comment. People that break one appointment are always going to break a second. I don't care who they are. And some people just won't break that appointment. Their word is their word, and they're not going to break it. So that's just one little thing I did. And you look next week or this next month of August at a broken appointment that you have to start your day. I will guarantee you two things. They've broken one before, and they'll break another one. So you don't say, no, I'm not giving it that to you. You've broken an appointment before. You just say, I have a 9 o'clock for you, or a 10 o'clock. It's just the way it's going to be. Okay? Because you can fix later breaks because you have time. So that's just one aspect of those things I wrote for over a year. And what that really does in the long run of things is it minimizes the bumps in your day. And let me tell you something. Anybody out there that tells you that what we do is easy isn't practicing dentistry. It is not easy, but it's doable. And I have translated this profession. You know, I had a company called Realizing the Dream. You can find it still, called realizingthedream.com. I still have the company, but I might change the name of it. And I use that name because to me, it was a dream. It was a dream to practice dentistry doing procedures that I've learned from all over this country. And by the way, you're going to get that from me. You're going to get the CE I recommend that you take over the next 5 to 10 years, because you can't take everything. Ask me how I know. I took almost everything. And you can't do that. You need to have time to do other things in life besides dentistry. And you have a family to take care of. And it's not, we're going to go into everything. And so part of the dream to me was minimizing the bumps, which is where the protocol book came from. Part of the dream is, as I said earlier in this, is getting to go into my office and do amazing, challenging procedures. And we're going to talk about what procedures would be most important to you going forward from today for you. Like, what should you master? Should you go master 6-month ortho? Should you become amazing at root canal? What is it you should do? And naturally, a part of that is what you like doing. I get that. But if you want to know what's the most powerful triad of skills that you could incorporate into your present practice, there's no doubt to me what they are. It would be oral sedation, and you have never heard my oral sedation protocol. And I guarantee you, unless you've heard me before, you don't know it. And it is flat out amazing. Meaning, I give a combination of 3 pills to a patient 90 minutes before their appointment. I'll tell you all the protocols, how that works, how do we do it, do we charge them for it, all that stuff. And we do IV sedation too, but I'll tell you, oral sedation is the one cornerstone to maintaining, and you're going to hear me say this over and over again, a fee-for-service practice. Isn't that unusual today? Because especially those of you that have practiced less than 10 years, you have it so much harder than we did 38 years ago. We actually got paid decent money by insurance companies in 1980, 1990, and so forth. And we didn't have the debt that you have, and I get it. I really do get it. So I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to tell you that there's a guy, me, in southern New Jersey. So I'm not in Manhattan, and I'm not saying that makes it easy, but I'm not in Chicago, Beverly Hills, Miami. I'm in a little rural area and have produced a practice that consistently produces close to $5 million per year on a 4-day work week with one associate who doesn't do the significant procedures. I wish she did. that I do, but she's excellent at what she does. And I did 4 million when she was part-time. And trust me, right now, it's not about the money. Because you can gross whatever you gross and have such a poor overhead, and we're going to go into that, that it doesn't matter. There's guys listening right now that produce 600,000 a year and have a better net than a guy that does 2 million a year. And at the end of the day, you want to be what I want to be. You want to be happy. That's why you're listening. If you're listening right now, that's why you take the courses that you take, because it's not just about being a phenomenal dentist or having a phenomenal dental practice. It's about being happy. It's about not hating where you're going to go Monday morning and thinking about that on Sunday night. And that goes for your team too. You know, I talk about all the strategies that I've heard that a lot of my colleagues use to motivate their team, all the money that you spend, that I get it, that it works for a while, but you'll hear a very different point of view from me. Why? Well, because I'm a full-time working guy, just like you are, or woman. And I only have my own perspective, but that's why you tuned in, to give you my own perspective on what works. How do you motivate the people? I've had one employee here 38 years and many over 20 years. And I'll tell you right now, it wasn't about money. I mean, they were paid very well. I'm not saying that. But I never employed a system that they got bonuses based on, well, I didn't do that. I did do that, but it didn't work. That's why I don't do it anymore. A system where if we increased our gross revenues by a certain amount of money, they would get a portion of that. I will explain to you in one of the podcasts why I feel that doesn't work long term. It does work short term, but we're not in it for the short term. So there's so much I want to talk about, both clinically, and my expert assistant, Beth Hoffman, who's filming this right now. She's going to edit it and make sure that it's useful, meat and potatoes stuff for you, so you don't waste your time. I'm going to try to keep these to about 30 minutes. And quite honestly, this one we're doing right now is kind of like a trailer to a movie. This is what you're going to get. I'm going to kind of read the feedback on it and read the is it reaching a lot of people? Do a lot of people want this information? To be quite honest with you, I don't even know. I can only judge it by the podcast I do now, and I've been very fortunate to do many podcasts with probably the other guy you know about, Mark Costas out in San Diego, and Peter Bolin down in Atlanta, and many others. And I get a lot of feedback, because one of the things you'll see me do is I actually send you information that I talk about, because I know you can't get it all on the podcast. So I actually literally get your emails. So by the way, I'm going to give you my email right now. It's Dr. Rasner at AOL. No period. DrRasner at AOL. Yeah, I know, it's funny, it's AOL, but that's what I got. And you'll get from me bunches of emails with information. Some of the information costs me a lot of money. Like, for example, the most powerful in-house marketing system I've ever developed to get you word of mouth. Okay? Word of mouth patients, which we all know are the best. And I've tried all kinds of things in my career. And look, maybe someday I'll look back at this and say, why did I give that all away? Well, why wouldn't I give it all away? Unless you're going to practice like literally right next door to me. And I don't even know if I care about that. Why do I care? So why not do something benevolent, gratuitous, that'll help? Because let me tell you something. Everything I'm going to tell you is not exaggerated. Never do I exaggerate. And it works. It flat out works. If it works for me, you don't even know, because I haven't told you that story yet, unless you've heard. I was not in the top of my class, unfortunately. I was on the other end. I went to University of Pennsylvania in 1980, from 76 to 80. And I tried so hard to be a good student. And the guys, I don't know what happened. They were just smarter than me, had a better biology background than I did. I was a psych major. I don't know. It doesn't matter. I didn't have many post-grad opportunities. So all these things that have happened to me that are good, and I'll share with you in some podcasts amazing setbacks I had. I know what life's about. I'm kind of getting up there. And so things can happen in a lifetime. You can have a back surgery. You can get cancer. You can have things happen. It's not always an easy ride for all of us. And despite all that, I'm here to give you, in different weekly podcasts, the keys to what I've got. And it's pretty nice, man. I'm here now. I'm 64 years old, and I'm in the 38th year of my practice. And I'm here today on a Friday morning because this means a lot to me. I went out and I bought this fancy podcast equipment. I didn't just do it over my video, over my MacBook Pro. And I did it with a purpose. I have a feeling, and anything I've ever done in dentistry, whether it's my speaking career or books I wrote or information I've given out, seems to be right connected to my colleagues. And I think that's because you already know. In fact, you know in 5 minutes I live in your world, because I told you that, because I do. So this is Dr. Steve Rasner, looking forward to giving you everything I have. It's going to take a long time. We're going to divide it up into, as I said in the beginning, business protocols, clinical protocols. What clinical protocols do you need to learn it? It's much more than oral sedation. We'll talk about atraumatic extractions. We'll have videos of atraumatic extractions. We'll talk about, of course, the third triad to me is implant dentistry. There's a lot to talk about. This is going to take me a long time, but I got the time if you got the time. So hope and looking forward to seeing you all real soon. Beth will be announcing the dates and get them out to you in a form on Facebook or your emails or however we do it. We'll give you a few days or a week ahead of time notice. I'm looking forward to doing this. I hope you're on board with me. See you then.